Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our December edition of the Inclusion and Wellbeing Forum. My name is Catherine. I'm one of the founders of Incluzun. Today we are welcoming Sherry, who is joining us from Distinct Learners. And today she's going to talk to us all about dyslexia, identifying dyslexia, supporting dyslexic learners, and offering some really useful tools and methods that you can take with you to apply in your setting, whether it's at home or in the classroom, literally tomorrow, inshallah. As always, we would ask that all mics be closed during the session. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat. I can help monitor that. We welcome all practitioners, but this is a free forum. It is not to promote any materials or anything like that. So please refrain from any kind of promotional discussions. We also welcome questions around supporting students, but again, please be mindful and not to mention specific names or schools so that confidentiality is maintained. We will record the session, and as always, we will post it on our YouTube channel, where we have literally hundreds of these sessions recorded. So please do, I'll put all of our links in the feed. Please do check out our YouTube channel, because we have had experts from all over the world offering us free advice and guidance, all available on our YouTube channel. And without further ado, I will stop sharing and hand over to Miss Sherry Maher Erian.
Thank you. Hi, Catherine and everyone. Thank you for joining. Just give me a second. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. All right. So my name is Sherry, as Catherine has introduced me. I am a dyslexia specialist, and I have around 10 years of experience working in the educational field, specifically in special ed. I am based out in Egypt. And my qualifications are through the British Dyslexia Association, as well as Dyslexia Matters. I'm also an assessor, soon to receive my new assessment certificate from CATOS. And these are my 2 cats, the beach in Egypt, and some of my cooking, which I love to do between work. I also have a master's in psychology, but that has nothing to do with what I'm currently doing. So today we will talk about dyslexia based on the new definition that was just released this year, actually. And it followed something called a Delphi study. And a Delphi study is a study where professionals and experts in a field come together to kind of rate or say what they feel about some statements about a specific topic. So this is what happened with the Delphi consensus for the dyslexia definition. They've gathered experts in the field internationally and gave them like a survey to say how they feel about different statements describing dyslexia. And 42 of those 62 statements received more than 80% consensus. And those are now the statements that have defined dyslexia as of this year. Now, before I go into that, I'm not sure if we can actually do this with the current setting, but I wanted to ask you to put in the chat box some of the words that you think come to mind when you think of the word dyslexia. I'll give 2 minutes for that. So anyone who's listening and able to type.
Yeah, we've got 46 people on the call, guys. So let's see. What do you think of when you think of dyslexia?
Yeah, what words come to your mind when you hear that word, dyslexia? Don't be shy. Yes, vision impairment. All right. Processing impairment. Okay. Difficulty reading.
Come on, guys. If anyone, we've got difficulty writing. Thank you, Bongsia. Any other ideas? What do you think of? How do the kids present when you see children who you suspect may have dyslexia? What kind of presentation do you see? Differently wired? Thank you, Renee.
Yes, jumbled letters. Thank you, Becky.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm driving, so I can't write, but I would like to share
Yeah,
My
sure.
reasons about dyslexia, I believe it is the children who couldn't see the things as we introduce it as it is. He
Okay.
has a different vision or different way to see the things.
Fantastic. Thank you, Shayme. So another thought about it maybe being related to vision, creative thinking,
Has seen
language
one
and
of the
processing
positives.
impairment, read in a different way, they don't see it normally, struggling to read and write, alignment, mirror writing, difficulty in comprehension. Very nice. Thank you, Emmanuel. So a lot of things are coming up that have to do with vision. That's really interesting, and it's really good because this is one of the most common ideas about what dyslexia actually does and what it affects. Now, not to waste your time, what I wanted us to look at, of course, we're not going to go into all the details of the 42 statements, but in the paper that they have published, they kind of wanted to simplify this new definition into identifying the nature of dyslexia, how it manifests, the impact of that, and the variance and co-occurrence of other difficulties with dyslexia. So this is where it gets a bit technical. So if you find anything that I'm going to share now a bit tricky, just write your questions in the chat box and we'll come to it at the end. Now, when it comes to the nature of dyslexia, they've decided that the nature and also the developmental trajectory of dyslexia depends on a number of multiple genetic and environmental influences. The new thing about this definition compared to other ones is it says that the developmental trajectory of dyslexia can actually change based on environmental influences. That is something new, and it says that children who receive early intervention might have a different nature of dyslexia compared to those who don't receive intervention. So that's where the whole interaction between genes and environment play a role in the nature of dyslexia. Now, the manifestation of dyslexia is what does dyslexia actually affect in terms of processing difficulties? What is it that it actually affects that then shows you that they're struggling with reading and spelling and so on? So the most commonly observed cognitive impairment is not actually visual. It's phonological or auditory. So and that doesn't mean that vision in itself, visual processing is not affected, but I'll come to that in a minute. Now, phonological processing is our ability to understand and manipulate language from the smallest pieces to the biggest pieces. So, for example, to be able to blend sounds together. So when I say the sounds d, a, g, you would be able to blend those together and tell me the word. The first one to type it in the chat box will get a big clap. What's the word I just gave you the sounds to? While I turn on my heater, getting dog. Well done. Very good. Well done, Munira. Right, very good. Okay, so you've used your phonological processing to blend the sounds, and that's the first bit of phonological processing, and that's called phonological awareness. The second bit is called phonological processing speed, and this is how quickly your brain recalls verbal information when it is presented with visual information. So when you see the picture of a cat, how quickly does your brain remember that this is the word cat and then says the word? So this is the processing speed. And phonological memory is how much phonological information or auditory information can you keep in your brain while using that information. Without using that information. So if I say 4, 5, 6, you would be able to retell me those numbers. That's how big the capacity of your memory is. Now, along with difficulties in phonological processing, they've also added other areas that dyslexia affects, such as working memory, and this is the memory that you use in the classroom to remember what the teacher is saying and also use that information. Processing speed generally, how quickly you're able to process information and then use that information to do something. And orthographic skills, and this is the visual aspect, but it has nothing to do with your visual acuity, with your actual vision. So it doesn't actually affect, dyslexia doesn't actually affect the student's vision in terms of how accurate they see the elements on the paper, for example, or the letters or whatever. But the processing of that is what is affected. And that's called orthographic processing, which is the way your brain processes visual images of language. It's a very specific kind of processing. So children with dyslexia see just like any other children, but it's the way their brain processes those images that's different. Now, the impact of those differences in their brain is that it affects all or some aspects of literacy. And the attainment of literacy for students who have dyslexia is weak in relation to a number of things, including their age, the teaching that they've received, and other areas of attainment compared to their own attainment. So they might be doing better in math or in oral language compared to their performance in literacy. And this happens across languages. So if someone is dyslexic, they will be dyslexic across all languages that they are learning. And it also shows difficulties in reading and spelling fluency, which are the key marker of dyslexia. Now, another thing they've added into this year's definition is the variance of dyslexia. Dyslexia exists on a continuum, so not all students who have dyslexia will present with the same exact level of difficulty. There are various degrees of severity to dyslexia, from mild, moderate to severe. And dyslexia can also affect the acquisition of other skills, such as math, comprehension, like someone had shared in the comments, and learning other languages generally. And it also co-occurs with other developmental difficulties, such as ADHD or dyscalculia or DCD. So someone might have both dyslexia and ADHD, and then this covariance also complicates the way that they learn and the way that they need to receive support. Now, not only did they offer us a new definition, but they also offered us a guideline in terms of identifying students with dyslexia. Now, the whole point of this new guideline is to make sure that we are not keeping students from receiving correct intervention until they have an assessment and diagnosis of dyslexia. This is to say that students should receive intervention and support even if there is no diagnosis of dyslexia or any other learning difficulty. As long as I know what difficulties they're facing, I should start offering intervention and not keep them waiting until they get an assessment for diagnosis. So the first stage that they have suggested is for us to first rule out and consider other factors before going into the screening phase. And this could be that they're a new student, they're an EAL student, there are issues happening at home, the student has mental health issues, anything that I can rule out to make sure that it's not a learning difficulty. And then move on to stage 2, where I am gathering information for screening. Sorry? Someone say something? Okay. Stage 2 would be my screening stage, where I'm gathering information, informal screening, observations, reports from parents, from other teachers. And this is where I'm gathering as much information as possible to help me plan for an intervention for the student, even without having a clear diagnosis. After I do this, I then, of course, monitor and observe and record and evaluate the response to my intervention. And based on this, I then decide if the student needs to have a diagnosis or not. So if the student's response to intervention is very slow, or it's not as effective as I had thought it should be based on evidence, then in that case, it's best to refer them to an assessor for a comprehensive assessment. And the role of the assessment in that case would be to define the specific personal weaknesses of the child in order to make sure that the designed intervention is very targeted. And also to ensure that if this child requires accommodations, that they receive it. Now, in their statements, so for example, this is statement number 23 and 30, and this is the rationale behind why we shouldn't wait for the diagnostic assessment, because the identification and support needs to be prioritized in order to save up and maximize on time. The other reason that is very important to me personally as an assessor is when I come to assess a child who has already been receiving intervention for almost a year, for example, and then I assess them, it shows me that if they haven't benefited at all or very little from that intervention, then that means that their dyslexia is very severe and they need stronger programs. Or programs that are targeting specifically the areas of difficulty that they have in their dyslexia profile. So the level of severity of dyslexia can actually be identified based on the student's response to intervention prior to the diagnostic assessment. Now, just to show you an example of what a screening would show you versus what an assessment would show you, and how a screening is more than enough for you to design an intervention plan. Now, in the screening, for example, for phonological awareness, you would be able to see that the child can't blend or segment sounds easily. Or you can easily identify the number of letters that the child can blend and segment up to. So then you design your intervention to push them to the next level. Now, in the assessment, you would actually have a score to say that their phonological awareness is below average, and how below average is it, and how much of a difficulty is it to them compared to other areas affected by dyslexia. Now, in the screening, you can also see that the child is reading slowly. The reading fluency is slow. How many words per minute can they read compared to peers and compared to lexile levels that they need to be reading? Therefore, your intervention can work on pushing them and improving the reading fluency, even if you don't know what the rapid automatized naming is, which is the skill that is assessed in a diagnostic assessment. Does it make sense? Give me a thumbs up. Any reaction? Excellent. Good.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Excellent. So what I mean to say by this is we need to have good screening tools in our schools to be able to identify the areas of need that students have without having to know if they are dyslexic or not. Now, screening tools that schools can use are different. Now, the whole purpose of a screening is to identify risk and to also plan for interventions. Now, there are many examples of screeners, starting from checklists or impact tests, like tests that only test spelling, or tests that only look at phonological awareness, etc., or classroom or specific student screeners. And I'll get into that in a minute. And most of the screeners that I like to recommend for schools are screeners that are evidence-based or are co-normed on other students, because you want to hit two stones with one rock, right? Two birds with one stone. What did I just say? Okay, I'm very cold. I just turned on my heater, getting a brain freeze. Now, screeners that actually give you, not only do they tell you that the student is behind on these tasks or on these skills, it also compares them to a population, are kind of the in-between between a screener that only identifies at risk and a diagnostic assessment. So DIBELS, for example, is one of those screeners. KT also is one of those screeners. There are many screeners included in the GL packages that some schools already have on their subscriptions with GL, or you can opt for area-specific tests based on the difficulty that you're seeing in your students. So for example, British schools do the year 1 phonics check, and that in itself is a screener because it shows you how far the child is behind on phonics and what areas does this child need to cover and recover and get retaught. Same for decoding, spelling, and comprehension. Any specific test that assesses a specific element of literacy can be used as a screener to help you identify at-risk students and also plan for intervention. Now, when you do that, you don't only identify students early on and give them the intervention early on, but you are actually improving the long-term outcomes and possibly changing the trajectory of the development of dyslexia based on the new definition. You might actually have a role in changing this child's brain altogether in a way to make sure that their dyslexia doesn't get more severe, but actually you're kind of making sure that they build those skills and build those connections in their brain in a way that slows down the trajectory of dyslexia development. Now, this is an example of, for example, the Shaywitz dyslexia screener. What it gives you is a number of questions as a teacher to answer to, and it gives you examples of how you need to look for answers to that question. So what type of behaviors you would actually see. And this is this is a screener that is really good at identifying at-risk students for dyslexia. All right, and this is just going to identify students at risk for dyslexia. It's not going to really help you plan for the intervention as compared to area-specific tests. Another type of screener is the basic dyslexia checklist. Every school has its own. There are a number of ones available online for free. It's a good indicator, but it's still not good enough for you to actually design an intervention. But still, it's at least a good thing to have in your school in case your teachers have any concerns about a student who might be struggling with learning how to read or with reading or whatever. You just give them this checklist as a first step. They fill it out, and then if this child has so many yeses, then further action needs to be taken, and that further action could be additional screening and additional testing. Now, the one that I really, really like, and I personally use at Distinct Learners, and I've trained some master's level students at the AUD on how to use it, is the DIBELS. Why I like it is, first of all, it is very based on research, and it has a lot of co-norm scores. So it actually compares students to students of their age. The other really nice thing, which I know all of you will love, is all of the resources are available online for free. Big surprise. Now, all of the benchmarking tools, the progress monitoring tools, and everything that has to do with actually testing the students, scoring those tests, and comparing those students to students their age, everything is available online. The only take is you need to have some training to be able to use DIBELS. And by some training, I'm just saying you need to know how to use it correctly and not just have the resources and put them to waste, because there is a specific way that you need to be administering those subtests and a specific way you need to be scoring and interpreting those subtests. Now, as you can see, they have a timeline for using their tools. And they have also 6 subtests. Some end by 1st grade, some end by 3rd grade, and some even start by 2nd grade, because each of them assesses a different thing. So for example, you will see that oral reading fluency can only be assessed starting 1st grade. You cannot assess oral reading fluency in KG, where students are still learning letter naming and word reading, and they are not still ready to be tested on reading fluency. The Maze subtest, for example, assesses both reading fluency and comprehension, and that starts by 2nd grade when students are more confident as readers. And tests can be done in the beginning, middle, or end of year, and then students are compared to the population, and you put their scores based on the time that you've tested them. So based on their scores, then the student is placed on either red, intensive support, yellow, strategic support, or green, core support. I will give a very, very big clap to the person who will be able to tell me what that means in a multi-tiered support system. What those 3 groups are. I see you smiling, Catherine. You are not allowed to answer. What does that mean for a multi-tiered support system school? What are these 3 groups? It's already in the title.
If you think about your IEPs, guys, think about it and how they look and how they're delivered.
I think, in my opinion, it's referring to inside the classroom, helping or supporting, and outside and face-to-face, one-to-one, for a group supporting in the resources room.
Fantastic. Excellent. That is exactly what it means. That is your 3 tiers of support. Very good. Thank you, Abdurrahman. That's your 3 tiers of support.
It's Abdul Maqsood.
Abdul Maqsood. Oh, sorry. The name is, it says Abdul something, and I just guessed it. Yeah, exactly. So the 3 colors are your tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Tier 1, everyone is receiving green core support. Everyone has best practice in the classroom. Tier 2, you have your yellow group support, moderate support, sometimes getting push-ins, maybe sometimes not so much getting group pullouts. And then you have your intensive support, which is one-to-one, push in, pull out, very intensive to make sure that this child is receiving every kind of support to help them bridge that gap. So that's why I love Dibbles. See how it's not just giving you different tools, it's also showing you where this child fits compared to the population of students their age. But disclaimer, this is normed on students in the US, all right? So we also always have to be very cautious when interpreting results that compare students in the Middle East, for example, or in the UAE, who are not representative of the same sample. So if a student, for example, gets a 15, for me, as someone who is assessing, gets a 15, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are in red support. It might mean that they're in yellow support, but because they're being compared to US students in US schools, only taught in English, perfectly native, then we have to be very cautious in how we understand the scores. And that's where the training comes in when using Dibbles.
It's a very similar problem that we face when we're delivering the MAP assessments,
Exactly.
the US curriculum.
Exactly. Very good point, Catherine. So it's really important that we don't just give out those scores to parents and shock them and make them feel like their child is so far behind. We have to be very mindful in explaining that this number is being compared to a child learning in their first language in a country that is only speaking their language. So our children are in a very unique situation, and we have to see it that way. Now, as you can see, the Dibbles, as it's supposed to be used, it's supposed to be implemented and administered to the entire classroom, not just to the students you feel are falling behind. And this is for you to see the beginning and end improvement of everyone in your classroom, and also to identify those three groups, the blue, green, yellow, and red. It gets into 4 after KG, because you have your top achievers as well, and they also need to be catered for, and they need to also be stretched and pushed to do even more in their literacy. So this is just an example of a classroom report that has been administered the Dibbles, and through that you can easily see who will require intensive support, who will require strategic support, who has deteriorated from beginning to end of year, and who has improved from beginning to end of year. Now, this is identification so far, all right? How do we actually support their learning? A number of things that I want to talk with you about. The first thing to know is we always follow an assess, plan, do, review model. That is how we do it at Distinct Learners. That is how every good school with a good inclusion team does it as well. You don't just assess, you plan, you implement your plan, and then you review how did that plan work out. Now, this is how we write our reports at Distinct Learners, for example. So this is a grade 7 student report. He has both dyslexia and ADHD. I had administered the Dibbles, both reading fluency and reading comprehension is this screenshot. And based on this, you can see that this student is in green. It's a girl. Okay, so her performance was in green, meaning that this is not really an area that she needs intensive support in. But anyway, she still gets to work on it because we want to push her and improve her reading fluency. Why? Because when I assessed her reading comprehension, which also assesses fluency, her score fell down into the yellow group, which means that her reading fluency in isolation is good enough. But when it's a matter of now using that reading fluency to understand the text, something is compromised. So that means that we still need to work on reading fluency even further. And to also work on specific and targeted things for comprehension, to make sure that she's not just reading, but she's also reading for meaning, and what does that actually mean? And to teach her these things explicitly. Now, our sessions are all done online. What you can do is make it gamified, make sure that the student is enjoying. They're linking their learning to things from their own experience. So now she read the word joy. She's talking about the movie she watched, Inside Out, and so on. I don't want to take too much time in this, but I wanted to show you an example of the assess, plan, do, review model. So this student that you just saw a video of, when we had assessed her for the pre-intervention assessment plan, they are given time to do free writing, okay? But with the assessor, myself, I think about the writing with them to give them kind of a visual and see how they will use it to write. So she had chosen to write about her family and her cousins and her close family and so on. But the actual writing she gave out was this sentence. So based on this assessment, the plan is for her to be able to write 4 sentences about a given topic. That's the SMART target. Now, to implement this target, I have to give her tools. When I want to write sentences about a topic, who am I talking about? What are they doing? Where is that happening? When is it happening? Why is it happening? So I have to give her the tools to actually reach that target. And when I review, if I feel that she has achieved that, I push her on to the next step. Okay, you've achieved that. Now we move on to writing a full paragraph. And this student, I know some of you might not believe me, but this student moved from writing 1 sentence that looks like this to writing a full paragraph about a topic that looks like that, just after 6 months of targeted intervention, supporting her and teaching her the correct tools on how to use, on how to write a paragraph. Another student also doubled the words she could read just by working on specific targeted evidence-based programs that work on reading fluency. And she moved 1 level, doubling her reading fluency and improving her reading accuracy just by doing that. Another grade 5 student who was writing illegible, completely, not even, you can't even, as a very talented teacher and reading very messed up spelling, I couldn't actually read what he tried to say, but he moved to be able to write 4 or 5 sentences about a given topic based on that intervention. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this is to give you hope and tell you that when students actually get the right support and the right intervention, we are literally changing the way their brain works. We are literally activating new places in their brain that was not activated prior to the intervention. You can see here, this is from a book called Teaching the Brain to Read. And this is to show you that brain research actually shows that effective intervention actually does change how the brain works. Now, in your classrooms, apart from the intervention and specific interventions that you want to offer for your tier 3 students, in your classrooms for tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3, you have to make sure that you are removing learning barriers and offering accommodations for all students. You are always planning your lesson plans as a teacher with your students of determination in mind. And accommodating their needs is essential for them, but it is helpful for everybody. Now, when you're thinking about teaching and you're thinking about your planning, it is best to make sure that you are trying to plan your teaching in a way that is multisensory, that you are integrating all the different senses to teach the same thing, or at least having the students moving, talking, listening, scanning pictures, choosing things out of a big number of options. In that case, you are activating so many parts in the brain, and you are helping the brain make stronger connections for that piece of teaching to stay longer in their brain. And multisensory teaching doesn't need to be complicated or costly. It doesn't have to rely on so many different resources or expensive things that your school might not be able to always supply for you as a teacher. It could be things that you already have in your classroom, but you have just never thought of how to use it in a multisensory way. But I have seen teachers do amazing, amazing things with just some pencils and papers, turning that into multisensory. Even this little thing here, this little activity, you just ask your students to work in pairs. You give each student, one of each pair, a card with a letter on it, and they write that letter on their pair's back. You just don't need anything except for 2 students and one of their fingers, and then you've activated multisensory teaching. Something like this, for example, linking phonological awareness to spelling. You don't need anything too complicated. You can just use fava beans or macaroni or whatever. You don't even have to use these really nice counters. You can use anything at all to represent sounds to something that is something that they can manipulate and they can use. Same goes to math. Same goes with anything that you're trying to teach. Now, general tips when teaching students who have dyslexia: please avoid putting the student on the spot by asking them to read out loud. If the student is comfortable and wants to read themselves, that is more than welcome. But as a general rule, when we do the round robin and everyone gets a turn to read, it's not really helpful at all to put a student who has dyslexia on the spot. When I'm asking students generally, and this is helpful for everyone, but specifically for those who have learning difficulties, to always offer a finished product model for the students. If you're asking me to write a paragraph, what does a good paragraph look like? When I'm giving instructions, it's best to keep it at 1 or 2 steps verbally. And if it's going to be more than that, it's great if the student has a printed copy or a visual copy, so then they're not overusing their working memory. If you feel like the student constantly doesn't start working or constantly feels lost, go to them after you've given instruction to the whole class. Go to them and make sure that they know what they're expected to do. Tell them again and ask them to repeat it back to you. Now, it's really important that we use tools to support the students in eventually being more and more independent. So students who lose track when they're reading, for example, they skip lines, you can just give them a ruler and then they can use that ruler to track their reading. Students who get stuck on specific words when they're reading and they stop reading and just give up, give them a highlighter. Tell them if you face a difficult word, just highlight it, we'll come back to it later. Continue reading anyway. The use of colored overlays have been helpful for some students, but if it's not available, it's not a must. What is a must is the use of technology for sure.
Can I just hop in?
Yeah.
The colored overlays, they are in every school, guys. If you go to your art department, they have those clear plastic sheets.
Yes.
Colored
Yes.
plastic sheets. You don't have to pay a fortune for like a special colored overlay. The plastic covers, or if you've got a drama department, if you're lucky enough in your school, the ones they use for the lights to change the colors of the lights. And pretty much every school will have them. They're available.
Fantastic point. Thank you so much, Catherine. The reason why colored overlays help is the contrast between the white and the black on the paper sometimes causes eye strain for the student, and sometimes specific colors, when they are put on top of the white, help the students read better because it minimizes the eye strain. So you just need to figure out which color works best with the student. But this is not really something that is super scientific. It works with some students, not all. So you'll have to try it out, but it's not going to magically fix the whole issue, okay? Just a disclaimer. Now, when we offer printed text for students, we have to be very mindful in the way we present it. Now, as you can see, for anything that I provide training on, I like to use this pastel kind of like beige background to not have that contrast with the white. It is really helpful for the eye to not have that strain. Also, to make sure that there is enough space between my lines, I am using a very sans serif font. It's not very complicated. It's not pretty. It's just very clear and easy to follow along and read. On Microsoft Word, you can number the lines like that, not bullet point, not number bullet points, but to actually number the lines. So if you have a student in class who loses track, you can, if you think that they're actually lost and you can easily see it as a very good teacher, you can just out loud say, for anyone who's lost their place, we're on line 7. As simple as that. So you have a very good tool that you can just use without making it more complicated for yourself. Now, try to avoid green, red, or pink, as these are difficult to read for students who are colorblind. And in the last year, I discovered that 5 of my friends are colorblind, which was a huge discovery for me, because you would never know until that person takes the wrong jacket at the end of a wedding.
I discovered partial color blindness when I think I was 22,
Really?
and I'd never known before then. Yeah, I'd never known.
Exactly. It's so hard to know, because the colorblind person has no idea
You don't know.
that
Yeah.
they're seeing things differently. So just to make it easier, and I can't really remember the percentage of people who are colorblind in the population right now, but just to make sure and steer away from that, just avoid green, red, or pink in your printed documents. Now, to also support students who have dyslexia, it's great if you can add picture, grade level text, when you're offering grade level texts that they cannot keep up with. You can offer pictures, pictograms, any graphics or diagrams or flowcharts. And this will just help with understanding and make sure that they understand the text, which is the whole point of reading. We don't want to just overcomplicate things. The whole point of reading is to understand the text. So if they can understand what the text is trying to say through a flowchart, then that's it. We've already achieved the objective.
Sherry,
Now,
have you used the tool called Widget?
Widget, yes.
Yeah, that we use that in a lot of the schools that we work with, and it is hugely impactful.
Absolutely.
It's Widget, for anyone who doesn't know, Widget is a communication tool, digital tool with a series of pictures that represent words, but the pictures are super simplified and they really supplement reading for kids, particularly those who are learning to read, but also for English as an additional language. It's really, really useful. It's brilliant.
Absolutely. And also, since you brought Widget up, for example, what could be really useful, for example, for students who have dyslexia, is to have question cards with the Widget symbols. So for example, you have who, when, where, why, how, and you have your Widget symbols on those question cards. And in the text, you have the Widget symbols on the answers. So it's just linking these things together, and eventually you can remove these prompts. But until the student is confident enough in understanding that who is a question asking about a person, and the person in the text is right there, as soon as they develop this confidence and awareness, then I can remove these visual prompts.
And Widget will generate worksheets for you really well. You can put in your content, you can upload a story, whatever, and Widget will populate it for you. And it will make posters if you're studying about plants, if you're studying about language or doing any kind of study. It's brilliant. It's in Arabic, English. I think it's in about 30 different languages as well. It's really good.
Amazing. Yes, it's a really, really good tool. And the more tools you have as a teacher to make it easier on you, the better you will be able to accommodate and make sure that you are offering accessible resources. Now, schools who have, I know this might be difficult to implement, the pre-teach, teach and reteach model, but sometimes it could be as easy as sending the student a video to watch at home before teaching a specific concept. So if we're teaching something in biology, for example, if I send or even anything in reading or literature, if I send a video, and thank God for YouTube, everything you want in the world has a video about it. You can just easily send a video for the parents to watch with the child before you teach that lesson. Then they come into the lesson with some understanding, some vocabulary, some preparation. Nothing is just shocking for them during the lesson. And then if you can also revisit it with another video, another worksheet, another flashcard, anything at all after the lesson, then you are reviewing and repeating the concept for them, which is something really important for students who have dyslexia. The repetition is really, really required. And last but not least, assistive technology. Assistive technology is not a luxury at all. Assistive technology is necessary. And the reason why I say this is students who have dyslexia have every right to use assistive technology, just like Catherine and I need to wear our glasses. So we need to teach them how to use assistive technology, because this is their way to access text and their way to also show their understanding when they cannot write. And eventually, if this is their normal way of working, they will be allowed to use assistive technology in their GCSEs exams, in their SATs, in university, in any setting that they will have to be tested. And the more you use assistive technology with everybody, the more you are reducing the stigma around the use of assistive technology. Now, I wasn't around when they invented glasses, but I bet the first person who had to wear glasses had a lot of stigma around them. Like, what's wrong with you? But the more people use assistive technology and the more you as a teacher also use it, the more you are reducing the stigma around having to use assistive technology sometimes. The other thing that's really good about assistive technology
that you've got Everway on there, because if you notice, I actually have Everway on
exactly. Exactly.
my
And I was just going to say, the reason why I really like Everway is, first of all, they have tools that are approved for use during assessments. The other thing is there are so many important tools that don't just allow the student to access the text, but also interact with the text. So they are reading and they come to a word that they don't understand. They can click on it and a definition comes up, pictures come up. They can listen to the definition. They can even have a tracker like the one we use. Instead of a ruler, they have something to keep them in place in the text. They can highlight, they can interact with the text. So I feel that, and I mean, there are n numbers of excellent assistive tech tools, but it's a matter of training your students on how to actually use it and making sure that they are using it independently, because that is the whole point of assistive technology, to make sure that the child is independent. They are not waiting for a human reader or a human scribe. They are fully independent and they can access text on their own. Now, if you want
a note as well, I was managing 6 campuses in Alain, and we rolled Everway out. At the time, it was text help across the campuses, and the majority of our students had very little English. It was the charter schools in Alain, and it not only helped to support the children who had reading difficulties, but for English language acquisition, it was so helpful for the kids, because when you hover over a word, it will show a picture representing that word. And Everway and widget are now combined. They're partnering so that the picture is now a widget. So when you hover over the word, you get the image of the word, which for someone with dyslexia, when they're reading aloud particularly, that's where I've seen a lot of the stress around dyslexia. If you're asking a child to read aloud, the panic sets in and they can't process some of those words quickly. And the widget just helps them, driven by text help or Everway, it helps them to get through more quickly and smoothly. It's really, really helpful.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then that builds fluency, that builds confidence, that builds also that it kind of automatically removes this barrier, this psychological barrier towards language, because you can imagine the amount of frustration that a child feels towards text. So if they have something that empowers them and makes them interact better with the text, then immediately with enough implementation of that, automatically this will start disappearing. Now, it goes without saying, the dyslexia definition was changed this year. That only tells us that the more we know, the better we do. So the more you read about dyslexia, the more you understand how to teach language, the better you will be able to actually teach your students. So these are some of the books that I love. And the last one is not specifically about dyslexia. The last one is actually about executive functions, which are things that the main functions that are affected when students have ADHD. And Smart But Scattered is an amazing book for any teacher, any parent that wants to understand the executive functions that you need in the classroom, in your day-to-day life, just to be a successful individual. Now, when you read these books, you will have a much better understanding of how the students learn. And when you have that understanding, that will automatically improve your planning, improve your empathy towards them, and also improve your relationship with them. And along with improving your awareness of dyslexia, if you do have a student who has dyslexia, it's also good that they see themselves represented in literature. So these are also some of the books that have dyslexic characters in the stories, written by people who have faced dyslexia themselves, or worked with students who have dyslexia. So I feel that it's also very important that the students are aware of their areas of need and of their areas of strength, because that is very empowering, and it gives them a voice to be to have self-advocacy and say, this is difficult for me, and this is how you can help me, and thank you so much for that. And that was it from my end today. And your questions are more than welcome, and also your feedback on what really stuck with you from today's little webinar is really, really welcome.
We have one question from Nelina, who says, I have a question about mirror writing. How do we know it's dyslexic or just a phase? And how can we understand this better for the age group of 4 to 6 year olds?
Okay, good. So ages 4 to 6, this is completely normal. Let me, I don't want to say something that I'm not sure of. There's up to age, I believe, 7. Yeah, exactly. Up to age 7. Mirror writing is actually completely normal. And the reason why mirror writing happens, I just want to debunk the myth of students seeing them differently. This is not the reality. Students mirror write because similar looking letters are not yet engraved in their orthographic memory. Orthographic memory is your memory of the shape of the letter or the word. Now, anything that looks similar will be mirrored. That's why mirror happens, because of poor orthographic development. Now, up to the age 7, students are still memorizing those orthographic images. So that's why it's normal, and it's not a sign of dyslexia. But if it continues after age 7, then it might tell me that this student has poor orthographic memory. Not that they're seeing it differently, okay? Do dyslexic students also find it difficult to speak in proper sentences? So one of the early signs of dyslexia is actually language delay. It could be one of the early signs. Not all students who have dyslexia present with the same difficulties, but one of it is language delay or jumbled up words. So pescetti for spaghetti, or like those jumbled up words and sentences. And also, it could be that they want to say something, but they can't remember the word. And this is because of their poor verbal processing speed. They have the word, but they don't have the speed to bring it into their memory quickly enough to put it into a sentence. So that's why also putting a student on the spot to answer a question in class without giving them enough time to formulate their sentence is also a big disadvantage for students who have dyslexia.
We have an interesting question. I have a student and I think he has dysgraphia. How can I differentiate between both conditions?
Fantastic question. I just diagnosed a student with dysgraphia yesterday. Dysgraphia is an impairment with writing. It's a learning difficulty that has to do with writing specifically. You can differentiate between dyslexia and dysgraphia when you see the child who is competent in reading. They are reading just fine, but their writing does not match either their reading or their oral expression. So they tell you amazing stories. They are able to read amazing stories and understand those amazing stories. But then when they come to writing, there's a huge gap and a misproportion between their reading and writing. But just a disclaimer, when you think that you have a child who has dysgraphia, I encourage you to not put that label in your mind. What I would encourage you to say instead is, I think I have a child who is struggling with writing, rather than put a diagnosis in your mind, because it could be N number of reasons. It could be that they have fine motor difficulties. It could be that they don't have confidence with writing. It could be a psychological barrier. The only way you can say this child has dysgraphia is if he is assessed for dysgraphia. So always look at the areas of difficulty, and this is when you can offer the correct support. All right?
You're getting a lot of positive feedback for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I think questions around confidence and behavior are they're different. They're separate. Like a child who is who doesn't follow instructions, that probably has nothing to do with dyslexia unless they're struggling because they don't understand what we're asking them. But if you have any questions and things around behavior, please check the YouTube channel. We have loads of videos on behavior management. Okay. What about a child who can't write properly? They do work slowly, but they can't write properly. Again, I think you answered that.
So that needs to be assessed further. That might require further assessment if the student has received support and still they are not improving. What can you say about a student who is reading, good at doodling, and anything about drawing but writing? Again, writing is a very, very, very complicated task. Writing involves so many things happening at the same time, and it requires a lot of processes and skills that need to be fluent enough to work all together in order for a student to be fluent in writing. So if they're good at reading, good at doodling, good at drawing, but they're having difficulties in writing, then further assessment needs to be involved, because we need to identify what are the areas of writing that they are finding difficult. Is it their working memory? Is the working memory too limited that they can't keep in mind the sentence they wanted to write until they write it? Is it their understanding of semantics? Is it their spelling? Is it their handwriting? Is it their letter formation? Is it their hand-eye coordination? There are countless things that could affect writing, and that's where assessment comes in.
I think we have a child with dysgraphia can read fantastically. So are they some way gifted?
Gifted is a very specific term, and giftedness is also identified through assessment. Again, just recently identified a student who is gifted, and that's based on scores of their IQ scores and specific indices in their IQ. So giftedness is not something that we could just throw around. If they are able to read but cannot write, it might mean that they have dysgraphia. There is no certainty in saying that until the child is assessed. But in all cases, if their reading is well above average, they might be strong in reading, but they need extra support in writing. And again, this is something that can only be identified in assessment.
Okay, I think we will close up for the day. Thank you so much.
Just a second, if you don't mind. I would like to share a link. If you guys have this on from your phones, I will put a link in the description box. And I would really, really appreciate it if you could rate today's session. And thank you very much for being fantastic learners.
Yeah, and it really was interesting. I think a lot of the feedback that I'm getting on the WhatsApp groups is the useful tools. Like people have been posting on some of the groups I'm on saying, join now. This is really
That's fantastic. Thank you.
It's been
I'm
really
glad.
Thank you for such an informative presentation, and thank you, Rehab, as well, for your support continuously. Inshallah, we can have you back in the new year and learn even more. I think perhaps a session on dysgraphia, or perhaps
absolutely we could definitely, yes, absolutely, we can cover more. And in the form, if people, as they fill out the form, you can leave in a comment of more things that you would like to learn about, and we can definitely offer that.
Yeah, and guys, don't forget, distinct learners are doing assessments for kids. So if you have a child and you're in doubt, talk to the family, talk to your school leaders, your inclusion lead, and definitely see if you can help with getting a proper assessment done. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. As I said, we will be posting the recording of the session on our YouTube channel. I'll be sharing that widely across social media tomorrow once we've got it edited and posted. And I hope everyone has a wonderful winter break and you enjoy a little downtime over the holidays. Take care, everyone. Ma salama.
Bye, Catherine.
Bye.
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 Someone was asking about what exactly is our WhatsApp group, so maybe they can be sent to